I've had the proud distinction of setting up a kind of platform on this particular network to talk about strange phenomena. And I only go as far as I can defend, meaning we take all comers, or at the very least, I take all comers on this particular subject because the area and the length that I'm willing to go on this subject are entirely, at this point, defensible. The New York Times writes a bombshell report on the United States government's black budget project studying UFOs in the world all at once. Changes. Several videos of UFOs are released that eventually are validated by the Pentagon. The Navy admits to encountering UFOs and goes through the historic step of changing their protocols to provide a path for personnel to submit information on sightings. This one was weird because they basically said, yes, we've been seeing things. Yes, we're going to take that stuff down and take that information in, but no, we're not going to tell you anything about it. So, yeah, we're experiencing real weird stuff. And, yeah, we're going to be studying that stuff, but no, you're not going to know anything about it. It was very strange. The United States military works with To the Stars Academy. Now, this is Tom DeLonge's UFO organizational materials that potentially came from UFOs. All of this, everything I'm saying is validated and legit. You can check it on Popular Mechanics. You can check it on New York Times. You can check it on CNN, Washington Post, the works. More importantly, the United States military pilots who are in the air with these craft, especially in some of the videos, come out and start talking to the media. To me, I think that's one of the most important aspects because that you're seeing a human being that we've endowed with all sorts of money and resources to fly these machines of war come out saying, yeah, this is what I saw. They're trained to see things in the air. They're trained to be able to understand what those things are. And they are out there talking. Congress gets briefed with eye-popping information that has inspired an official program of congressional briefings to explain the strange phenomena and technology that pilots and people in general have been encountering, in this case, for decades, especially around nuclear weapon sites. The CEO at the center of the Black Budget program is Bob Bigelow. He's head of Bigelow Aerospace. Now, he may be one of the people who you may know the least, and yet he is the person who was the most influential in this and was honestly head of the study more so than Luis Elizondo, even though Luis Elizondo is the one who gets the credit for being head of the ATIP program. To have a conversation about all of this interesting stuff that has been taking place, especially on this issue of UFOs or UAPs, if you want to go that route, we're joined by Stephen Bassett. Stephen Bassett is an executive director of the Peridium Research Group, PRG, founded in 1996 to end a government-imposed embargo on the truth behind extraterrestrial-related phenomena. Stephen, thank you for joining us, man. I really appreciate you joining us.
Good morning, Jamarl. It's been too long between our interviews.
It has been too long. It has been a couple of years, and a lot has taken place in these years. I'm trying my
Yes.
best not to kind of geek out on this, and I'm doing my best. Um, let's start here. When you and I talked, in fact, before we start on the other stuff, just a quick question: the Turkish UFO from Bob Lear, for Roger Lear. Now, I don't know if people know about this. You guys can do a research, a quick Google search or a YouTube search. What do you think about that? Now, this was Bob Lear was a doctor who would go in and pull out devices out of people. From my understanding, Bob Lear was a little bit cagey around the UFO thing. He wanted to keep credibility as a doctor that basically did this particular task. However, when he was in Turkey, he just so happens catches on camera a photo of a UFO that had been visiting Turkey often. And that video of that is somewhat shocking because you can see people in the craft.
Mm,
Now,
yeah.
I would imagine you've had to see that video. And the Turkish apparently universities went through it trying to debunk it, and they couldn't debunk it. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a legit video? I mean, I don't see Roger Lear lying to this extent.
The Turkish case is interesting. Uh, it hasn't been debunked. I think there's a good chance that it's a legitimate case, but it's one of uncounted number of cases that have been investigated or turned up in the last 70 years. So it's part of the bigger picture. Uh, my job is not to. I'm not a phenomenologist. I don't investigate cases. I look at the total picture and try to decide how to use what we've learned, the evidence, to advance the political process, the political resolution of this issue. In other words, I'm a disclosure activist, and my job is to get disclosure, and that means confirmation of the ET issue from
Well, Well,
the
right
heads of
here,
state.
haven't you gotten confirmation? Like, is there a
No.
difference between confirmation and disclosure? Meaning, it seems that over
Yeah,
the last
it
several
is
years,
confusing.
well, it seems over the last few years, confirmation has been the case. I mean, from the standpoint of the media reports, from the standpoint of the pilots that's coming out, from the standpoint of the videos, from the standpoint of the things that have been going to Congress, like, it's either us or not. But there are no solutions beyond that. Meaning, it's nothing. It's not on the table anymore. It's either us or it's not us. Is this not confirmation? And is there something beyond the confirmation that you're looking for? And if so, what?
Well, it's language is important here. The term disclosure with a small d came to mean the process of revealing information on this. In other words, can we get something from the government to an FOIA, research on sightings, just trying to learn about the issue and then passing that information on. That's disclosure with a small d. It's been going on for 70 years. I developed the concept of disclosure with a capital D in the late 1990s. And what I meant by that is that the goal, the activist movement needed a goal. Every activist movement has got to have a relatively well-defined goal, or people are simply not going to stay with it. They're not going to stick with it. And that is, in fact, the formal acknowledgement of the extraterrestrial presence by heads of state. Simply put, when the President of the United States tells the American people formally that, yes, this phenomena that you have learned, know so much about and have heard about for 70 years is in fact of extraterrestrial origin. That is the disclosure event, capital D. That's confusing for some people because they confuse small d disclosure with capital D disclosure, and it gets a little messy. But so some people have used the word confirmation. In this sense, again, it's confirmation, it's an event. It is the formal confirmation. It is the statement from our president, or it could be from another president, it doesn't have to be this country, that yes, this phenomena is not simply real. We've always known it's real, but it's extraterrestrial. That
And
is what has
Stephen,
never happened,
from your high
and that's
level
what we have to.
view, is the jury still out on whether I'm open to either possibility, but sort of looking at this, uh, looking at this with a reasonable degree of skepticism. There's also the prospect that these are advanced technologies that nations on our globe have developed, that they are sort of choosing to selectively disclose or reveal for whatever reason, because it suits their interests to do so. That there's also entirely a possibility of that. Now, I also, from a young age, was aware of the Drake equation and Fermi's paradox, and the idea that it's weird that we don't see other lives out in the galaxy. So I'm open to both, but to be skeptical about this, is the jury still out, in your opinion, from a high level, or in your mind, has it been decided these are extraterrestrially sourced? Stephen?
Yeah, the jury is in. The jury is packed up, gone home, and gone about with their life. Let me be clear with your audience. The extraterrestrial presence is a fact. It's been proven many times over. Secondly, those within the government that have a need to know, and by government, I mean not just the United States government, but the governments of every developed country in the world. Pick them: France, Canada, Australia, China, Russia, Soviet Union, whatever, have known that there's an extraterrestrial presence going all the way back, probably no later than 1947, maybe 1950. So for the last 70 years, we've been in a situation where every government has known that there's an ET presence. And by that, I mean those inside that government that have a need to know. It doesn't mean every person working in the government. The governments have chosen to go along with an embargo on this issue. The United States has led that embargo, meaning it's real, but we're not going to tell you it's real, and don't even look into it.
And to
In
make
other
that
words, it's a
point,
big lie, but it's a national security lie. It's for important reasons. That truth embargo is now 74 years old. And so, what became initially as a research effort on the part of citizens, scientists, so forth, trying to look into the phenomena because the government wouldn't, or when it did, it was actually a bogus program. Blue Book was not a legitimate investigation. It was essentially a put-on effort to keep things under control. Um, uh, the event went from being research to being an activist movement, which really didn't get underway until after the Cold War ended. And by activist movement, what do you mean? What are all activists trying to do? All movements trying to get governments to do something they don't want to do, right? And so, in this case, the government does not want to confirm the ET presence. The activist movement says, "Yes, you will." And that is what's going on now. The idea that extraterrestrials are not here is, well, in the mind of some, not solved. That's okay. But in the minds of those that have studied this issue thoroughly and know the history, it is absolutely a fact. So, with that in mind, where are we now? Well, what's happened is that thanks to the work of a lot of people over many decades, many of which are not with us anymore, we finally got to a point where there was a major breakthrough, the kind of breakthrough we've been looking for. And that took place in 2017. And that was when the To the Stars Academy was launched. The origin story of the To the Stars Academy is not fully known for obvious reasons, because it originated within the Department of Defense and some other agencies, people working for the government. Names can't be named. So it's going to be a while before we learn the origin. But the program and the concept was put together, I think, in late 2015 and in 2016. It was supposed to launch probably at the end of 2016 or early in 2017 after the election of Secretary Hillary Clinton. She lost the election, and the whole thing was, how would you say, tossed up in the air and did not get launched until October of 2017. In which case they announced the idea, the company, the people involved, and so forth, put up a website and put out a video. And it was a huge thing for those that are in the know. Some people would have thought, what do I care if a rock star's got a group together or something? No, for those of us that understood the implications of it, they were profound. But if we had any doubts, just 60 days later, 2 articles appeared in the New York Times based on information provided to the New York Times by the members of the To the Stars Academy. They probably approached the Times within a couple of weeks of launching the organization. This was all planned in advance. In fact, the whole thing has been pretty carefully thought through. This is no trivial or casual effort. When the New York Times articles were printed on the front page that day, December 16th, 2017, the issue of the ET presence and the future of the truth embargo, as regards those 2 things, we crossed the Rubicon, meaning that there was absolutely no going back, and that from that point forward, we're on a relatively straight line towards the culmination of this issue politically, and that is the formal acknowledgement of the extraterrestrial presence.
And to be clear,
That the
Luis
last 3 years have
Elizondo.
been extraordinary in that regard.
Well, and to be
Yeah.
clear, Luis Elizondo, the one that was running the program on CNN, when asked, "Are we being visited?" he says, "Yeah, based on my scientific observation, doing this for X number of years, yes, we're being visited. It is not us." And goes into the equations, goes into this notion of some of the mechanics or the physics that are being used. Somebody asked Luis Elizondo a question about radar jamming. They were basically saying, look, why are they jamming radars if they have the ability to, be invisible? And he made the point that says, well, how do you know they're jamming your radar? How do you know that the means of which the craft moves is not using gravity and manipulation of space to do it? Meaning this stuff goes beyond us, which is why they don't think it's us. Yeah. Marco Rubio was asked. Marco Rubio says, I hope it's not us. And by the way, the Brazil government had been investigating this stuff for years. Operation Saucer, for example, is something that you could look up, where the Brazilian government, the Brazilian military was investigating this stuff because you had saucers that were basically attacking some of the people that were in Brazil. Sure. It is known, it's research. It's not something that that is not well thought out. And like you said, at this point, they crossed the Rubicon on this issue. I'm curious, from your perspective, where does this go?
It isn't us.
Well, right. I don't believe it's us either. Where does this go? I mean, from a political standpoint, because you're right. Hillary Clinton had an interest in this. She was caught holding the book. She was caught asking, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, to ask her the UFO question. John Podesta made the point of saying, the greatest failure in my career is not getting the UFO issue out. I think he said this when he was in the Obama administration. Um, the belief, and you put this out, and I think I agree with you, was that when Hillary Clinton got in office, there was going to be all of this pressure that came out by the videos being released, by the organizations being released, by the news articles that would give Clinton the impetus, the political pressure to say, I'm going to open the books. That was the thought. And she lost the race. And so Trump gets in, and Trump has no interest in this. And yet the information comes out regardless. What do you think was going to happen with Clinton if she indeed won that race and this information came out in the same way? We only have a few minutes, but I just want to get this part in before we leave.
Okay. Okay. We go on a break, or we're going to wrap it up?
We can go on a break. You can come back. Yeah, you can come back if you want.
Yeah, we need some more time here, but let me be clear. Secretary Hillary Clinton intended to end the truth embargo. She was going to disclose, do what was necessary, and that means get hearings. I mean, you have to start with hearings. It always has to start with hearings. That's why we've been trying to get congressional hearings for 52 years, 58 years, and 52 years, and haven't been able to, because hearings would end the truth embargo. A lot of people inside the military intelligence complex figured this out. They pretty much knew that's exactly what it was going to do, which I believe is why they internally came up with this idea of setting up an organization outside of the military intelligence complex, made up of former careerists within the military intelligence complex operating as private citizens, in order to be able to advance the subject, right, and be part of the solution. So it's like a public relations campaign. That was the plan. I think they would have launched the To the Stars Academy late 2016, early 2017, and that would have then got them into the game. And then when Hillary disclosed, they would have been in a pretty good position, meaning that the Department of Defense. That was the plan. It blew up when she lost. It took them 10 months to regroup because it was a mess, and they had to regroup, and finally made the decision to go ahead and launch in 2017 under the Trump presidency. Then they began to do what they do. They went to the New York Times, but I think that they were, by and large, taking it slower than they might have. They kind of slow walked it to see how the administration was going to go. And I think ultimately they figured out that he was not going to get a second term. And so things started to pick up again in 2019. And so where is all this heading? Where it's heading is this. We have a new administration, which is much more conducive to just getting the congressional hearings that we need. They have briefed the Congress behind the scenes for over 2 years. That's Christopher Mellon. They've been gathering witnesses for almost 2 years. That's Luis Elizondo. So the stage has been set for congressional hearings under the Biden administration for military witnesses to testify under oath before multiple committees about all the things that you've just mentioned and a whole lot more. And those hearings will ultimately make it possible for the president to confirm the extraterrestrial presence uh, in concordance with the Congress and the DOD, and everybody wins. It's done appropriately. Millions of people will watch these hearings. They'll see extraordinary evidence put forward. The president will say, looks to me like the evidence is confirmatory, and that's the way it has to happen, politically and appropriately. And that's what's going to happen. And the only principal problem now, not principle, the issue now is when. It needs to be soon. And I can go into length as to why it needs to be soon. But because of the pandemic and the fact that it is extended due to the new variants and the vaccine schedules, and because of the actions of the president and his supporters after the election in November, particularly the insurrection and all that took place, that's made it a little difficult to get these hearings underway as soon as I would like. I'm hoping they will start no later than April, end of April or May. By then, the vaccines will have gone. We'll have enough people vaccinated where in-person hearings can be conducted without any problems in Washington, D.C. That's what I believe is about to go down. And I'm going to be talking about this all over the place. I've already booked 51 interviews, and I'm going to probably book another 50 over the next 30 days and be writing about this. But this is where this has all been leading. And the To the Stars Academy is the reason what they did, that they were formed, and the actions that they took, and all the responses to those actions that have taken place by the Navy, by the Army, by college professors, you name it. As everybody is trying to position themselves to get on the disclosure train. That's the analogy I use. The disclosure train is getting close to leaving the station, and you're seeing people jumping on that train every week or so. Somebody new: Marco Rubio, Avi Loeb, Jaime Shed. Just read the news. These are people going, well, that train's leaving. I got to get on, and that's what they're doing.
Well, they're also
Others are
concerned.
taking their time.
I mean, it also freaked
What now?
Congress out. I mean, when they were seeing the videos, Luis Elizondo made the point of saying Congress is not seeing fuzzy videos; they're seeing real things. And when Bob Bigelow was
Well,
asked,
yeah, they took the pilots up. They were holding. Not we didn't know this until mid 2019. They were taking the pilots up to the Hill and briefing committee chairs. There's like 6 committees that'll be holding these hearings, and the chairman of these committees, that's critical. They're the ones that decide if these hearings take place. Now, back then, they were the chairman and the Senate were Republicans, and in the House they were Democrats. Still, they were briefing these people. How many, we don't know. We think they've had dozens of briefings on the Hill. These are off the record, private, no press conference. So you do that when you're preparing for something, and they're preparing for hearings. Eventually, the president got word, and he asked for a briefing, and he got a briefing with the pilots. We're pretty sure Christopher Mellon might have been present. Did he take any action? No. Uh, he got a briefing. That's it. Fine. So that's been going on. These committee chairs have already been prepped. They know what to expect.
right,
So I think they're probably already on board to hold these hearings when it's possible.
they were
But to
also
hold
freaked
hearings,
out
you got to have witnesses,
because the
and
science.
they've got the witnesses lined up.
Well, right, and the science was weirding them out because their thought was, how are these ships doing what they're doing? Are they a threat to us? Where are they come? They had so many questions and very few answers to the questions. Um, we do have 2 callers, but I do want to hit to something real quick. Luis Elizondo. When you and I talked last time, I made this point about the guy being counterintelligence and me having questions about what he is trying to do and what he is trying to accomplish. Now he is saying he's kicking things into second gear. He's left To the Stars Academy. I have no idea what the second gear thing means. But with the unidentified coming out with this emphasis on military, have this given you any qualms in regards to what Luis Elizondo is potentially trying to accomplish? Because it seems like it's going in a
No.
heavily militaristic direction.
No, militaristic is too strong a term. The context in which they have come forward and are presenting it to the journalists, such as New York Times, and to the members of Congress, is on the basis of national security. There is a legitimate national security concern, without question. They turned off our nuclear weapons. They turn up in the vicinity of our carrier groups and so forth. So there's always been that concern. How serious that concern will ultimately prove to be, we don't know, but it is a concern. More importantly, if you're going to get the press at the highest level, like the New York Times, giving it the kind of vetting and approach that it deserves, if you're going to get members of Congress to take the enormous political risk of calling for hearings, then they have to have a basis which is going to be acceptable, and that basis is national security. And so the hearings are going to be held under that aegis, meaning we're going to be talking about this phenomena with respect to its implications on national security. In the process, of course, it will confirm the existence of that phenomena as being extraterrestrial. Nothing wrong with that. It's okay. Now, it doesn't mean that some people may try to take it too far. It doesn't mean some members of Congress may say, "Oh my God, this is a threat. We need to have a space force. We need to put trillions of dollars into it, defend ourselves against the ETs." That could happen, but I don't think so. All right. I think from the beginning, these gentlemen and one woman had a fundamental agenda. We're going to help get congressional hearings. We're going to help get the witnesses together, which they have done. Scores of military people have contacted them, particularly Luis Elizondo, with their stories, and they've been vetting those stories for some time. We've seen some of those witnesses. They brought some of them on the unidentified program, but I assure you they've been contacted by far more than that. So they've got the witnesses, they've got the committee chairs briefed, everything is set. All they have to do is call the hearings. And once they do, the hearings will begin, and national security will be in the forefront of the questions and what have you. And we'll see how that goes. But there's
Okay, so
nothing to
let's.
be alarmed about that. It's simply the way you would expect it to be, and it's appropriate until they confirm this finally, until we get the confirmation and we can really start getting the information, which obviously has been sequestered from us for years. Only then, in the post-disclosure world, will we be able to really assess to our satisfaction how dangerous are these extraterrestrials? What is their intentions? What does the government know? Then we will have an idea. Until then, it is simply a national
Another
security
question.
concern because they are a potential threat, which is not the same thing as being a threat.
So come on, come on, come on, come on. Hello, Steven. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so are we still, is
Yes, we're
this just
still
a
live.
private thing between you and me, or are we like on the internet or
Well,
something?
we're on my channel now. Beforehand, we were on the radio station. The radio
Oh, okay,
station
I
is
got you.
fault
I
lines,
got you.
yeah. And so the radio station ended at 10 o'clock. But now you're on my channel. We can talk. We can have a regular conversation without the introductions or without
Boy,
the
that was a
breaks.
fast 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's a fast 30 minutes because it's like after you take the break and everything else, it's like you're moving through it. And then the phone call just went left field. Yeah. So I wanted to get you where we can have the conversation where you can finish your thought.
Sure, sure.
Let me ask you this: why the urgency? Like, because you made the point that said there's an urgency about getting this
Yes.
out, and it does seem to be that it was a full court press and trying to get this information released. Why? What was the reason for it?
By full court press, are you referring to just the recent developments, or are you referring going all the way back to the launch of the To the Stars Academy?
To the Stars Academy, like
Yeah,
because it seems like
yeah, yeah.
they tried to get it out. It seems like Bob Bigelow, he made the point that said that they were trying to put the toothpaste back in the container. That the one who ran the project, they basically cut the rank down, so the guy who's running it is in a lesser rank. You have people who were scared, thinking that they were trying to open the gates of hell, and so there was this kind of
Yeah.
religious aspect of this where people were against it. Like, so what is the impetus to get this information out with this much urgency at this particular moment? Because it seems
This
like
this
it was,
is
yeah.
yeah. Look, I can give you my assessment. They have not said. Uh, See, one of the problems that is endemic here is that there are a lot of limits to what the To the Stars Academy people can say. They're not operating completely without restraints. They've got a lot of restraints on them, and that mostly involves Mellon and Elizondo, who are the ones that have been speaking out the most. But there have been a few others that have turned up here and there, and the reasons are many. But one is they're all uh, they've all virtually, I'm pretty sure every one of them has taken oaths regarding their positions when they were working with the government. Secondly, they have non-disclosure agreements on top of the oaths. And then thirdly, the people that are supporting them, whatever support they have within the military intelligence complex, which I think is focused mostly in the Department of Defense, it's not formal. This is not a formal project of the Department of Defense. This is an effort by people inside, operating independently, to take a bold step here. And they created the To the Stars Academy was created because the people working for the government can't do what the To the Stars Academy can do. They are under the employ of the government. They have all kinds of restrictions, and they can't do that. So they created essentially a surrogate organization, an NGO made up of former members who are no longer in the employ, and that organization is what took the information to the New York Times. So this was a bold move, and it could not have happened unless there was support within the DoD and elsewhere in the military intelligence complex, giving them enough cover. We do not know anything about that. We don't have the origin story. They have not talked about it, and they're not going to talk about it for some time. But it's got to be there. That support is there. And so I think when this was created, there were, how would you say, rules of engagement. And the rules of engagement were pretty clear. One, you guys are going to you're going to have this organization. You're going to go public, but you're not going to release any classified information. That's against the law. You're not going to do that. You're not going to violate your non-disclosure agreements. That's against the law. You're not going to do that. And in fact, you're not even going to say the word extraterrestrial. You're not going to make definitive statements that the ET presence is real, that's what it is. You can't go there. And so what you've seen, if you listen to all of the interviews that I have that they've given, all the statements they've made, all the tweets they've given out, they do their best to not go there. They walk right up to the edge, to the line, but they don't cross that line.
We'll kick the
Meaning they
tires,
don't
but we won't
say
tell you
there's
what's in the
extraterrestrials
craft,
here.
basically.
I'm sorry?
We'll kick the
Sorry.
tires, but we won't say what's in the craft. That seems to be, it's like,
Yeah, that's another way of putting it. They can't go that far. And that's the rules that they're under. And they have stuck with that. And that's frustrating to us who are knowledgeable, but we're not the ones trying to do what they're trying to do. What they're trying to do, and the purpose of that, was to get first of all, some major stories into major press like the New York Times, brief the Congress, get witnesses together and hold hearings. And that is not easy to do. In fact, we haven't been able to do it since 1968. Every effort has failed. And so what they're doing, and so they had to follow the rules of engagement. And it was tough on them, plenty tough on them, because they were getting all this kind of pressure. What do you mean? You're not you can't you're saying that it's possible that the Tic Tacs might have been an advanced aircraft and all this stuff. And I feel for them, but I understand it, so I'm good with it. Others maybe don't get that. And so the now what was but to get to the question is, what was the urgency? Well, they haven't said that, but I'm going to give you my view. The urgency was based on the fact that quite a few people within the military intelligence complex were paying very close attention to the 2016 election, or to Hillary Clinton. They know, let me put it this way, there are plenty of people inside the military intelligence complex that are fully aware of the connection between Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, John Podesta, Leon Panetta, their political team, and the ET issue. They know about the Rockefeller Initiative. They're aware of the statements made by Podesta and Bill Clinton and her. And over the years, well, not her, but Podesta and Bill Clinton, they've been aware of this all along. And then, right, and they knew that she wanted to be president. And I think they were pretty sure if she was president, she was going to end the truth embargo. But they weren't certain about that. But then in 2015, early 2015, stories started appearing in the press about this connection between Clinton and the ET issue. Those stories were being generated by me in Washington. That was my project. It's the whole reason I did the citizen hearing on disclosure, to set the stage for that. So I'm pushing the story to the media in DC, and we finally started getting some action. The reporters were writing the stories, and then they were contacting Hillary Clinton's campaign office and John Podesta's office wanting a response. If you're going to write a story about the connection between a leading presidential candidate and the ET issue in a mainstream press like the New York Times, the Washington Post, or Washington Times, you have to contact these people for comment. So they were contacting her and Podesta to get comments. They weren't getting any comments. They couldn't comment. So they were stonewalling them, meaning they would not return their phone calls, which to any reporter tells you you've really got something. You either get a comment, you get a no comment, or they don't contact you at all. And if they don't contact you at all, that means you've got a story. And so early in 2015, Podesta knew that the wolves were at the door, and he was going to have to do something about that and respond in some controlled way. And so as the year unfolded, suddenly You're starting to see statements from Podesta. You're starting to see Hillary turn up on Jimmy Kimmel and Bill Clinton turning up on Jimmy Kimmel. You're starting to see that their responses to the media stories I was generating out of DC. So the Department of Defense guys are looking out the window, and here's what they're seeing. They're seeing a candidate that they've known for years is connected to the ET issue. She's running for president. She's considered a lock to win the presidency. It's a no-brainer. She's got the polling. She's going to win. They see that her interest in this subject is now being covered by the mainstream media. And that's early in a campaign that's going to last for 2 years. And so they're thinking, oh boy. And then they start seeing her turning up on, well, first they saw Podesta was making comments. Then she's turning up on these controlled programs like Jimmy Kimmel. And they put 2 and 2 together, and they realize Hillary Clinton is going to win the election, and Hillary Clinton is going to disclose. Now, what is that? Why did they care? Well, the reason they cared was this. They know full well that disclosure was eventually going to come. When? Didn't know. But now it looks like it's happening. And they know when what is disclosure? Capital D. It's the formal acknowledgement of the ET presence by the president, right? Not by some colonel in the Pentagon or some leaker, right? Over at, I don't know, Office of Management and Budget, whatever the hell. It has come from the president. It will be the most profound event in human history. That's disclosure. And when it comes, you know what's going to happen next? The politicians are going to throw the military intelligence community under the tank. They're the ones they're going to say, in answer to the endless list of very tough questions that are inevitably going to be raised, really tough questions. They're going to say, we want it, we did our best to try to get this information out. We were blocked by the Pentagon. We were stonewalled by the Air Force. Project Blue Book, Wignall's case closed report, all this stuff. They're going to totally throw these people under the bus. And these people don't see themselves as enemies of the state. They have been defending the country since the end of World War II. They are good people. They don't make a lot of money. And the idea that they're going to be the scapegoats for the entire political class when the biggest event in human history goes down does not appeal to them. And so the pressure they were under was, what the hell can we do about that?
So you think they were trying to get ahead of the story?
They were trying to not only get ahead of the story, they were trying to do something positive that would be connected back to them, so that they would be seen as, hey, we were trying to help too. We're not the bad guys. They were limited in what they could do. That wasn't an easy thing, but they're very smart people, and they came up with a pretty solid idea. Create an NGO, whatever the hell you call it, right? Have that NGO be comprised of former high-end people from the military intelligence complex, careerists, CIA, Lockheed Skunk Works, DOD, DIA, all these people no longer employed, working for an NGO, public benefit corporation, who then go to the New York Times with major evidence that we could not deliver to the Times. Now, it had to be declassified, the gun camera footage. We don't know how that happened. It had to be gotten out. We know that Mellon is the one that received it. He did acknowledge that some rules were bent a little bit, but they couldn't have been bent that much, or there would have been some problems.
He would be in prison right now.
They delivered the stuff to the Times, and it all starts there. All right, and what's most important for those that are questioning the logic of my assessment is that if you review the last 3 years, has there been a pushback? Has there been an attack? Have the CIA come out and condemned these people? Have they been pulled in, reprimanded by anybody? No. Within the military? No, they haven't. They have been left alone because ultimately they have cover. And so that tells you all you need to know about where the military intelligence complex ultimately is going to stand on this. And so the urgency was we have got to get ahead of this before Clinton gets into office. She could move to get those files within a week after she was inaugurated. We know that they know she wanted to do it. They know how angry she was about what happened during her administration of her husband. He was stonewalled, attacked. She was attacked. They were hit with everything they could hit because partially the military intelligence complex went ballistic when they found out that Rockefeller had actually come in the door and said, I want to get the files out. And he's a billionaire, major funder of the DNC. And so they're going, my God, Bill Clinton's going to be the disclosure president. He ain't acceptable. It's too soon, blah, blah, blah. And so they gave him hell. And she left that job as first lady mad as holy hell. Fully intended to become the president and get the legacy her husband was denied. She thought she'd get it after Bush was done. Hell, they thought Bush might only last 4 years. But then she lost to Obama, so things got complicated. So that's the answer to the urgency. Now, what's the urgency now? All right, the urgency now is this. The United States is in deep trouble. All of our sins of omission and commission have come home to bite us on the ass. We created a situation where an administration took power that was extraordinarily dangerous and potentially destructive. A lot of things happened. Then a pandemic happens. Trillions of dollars have been spent. Our situation worldwide has been undermined. The risk of nuclear war is at an all-time high, according to the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. We've got major problems. And so in comes a new president with a task before him every bit as difficult as what FDR faced in 1933. How in the hell is he going to be able to make some improvements, make some changes, get us on the right track? Here's how it happens. It's called political capital. If you're going to get major things done, you have to have political capital, which you then spend in order to get people to do what you want them to do, whether it's the Congress, whether it's the agencies, whether it's the Pentagon or anybody else. And so Biden comes into a really difficult situation, right? And and he knows, by the way, everything I've been talking about, he knows about it. He's in the dark. He knows about it, and there's reasons why he knows about it. I can go into that. But the point is that here he is. And so the situation is this. The issue has been out of the bag since 2017. The press has been covering it extensively. Over 700 articles at last count that I've linked on my website, mainstream articles earmarked regarding the TTSA and other developments. The expectation levels are rising, all right? The Congress has been briefed. Witnesses are there. So he could hold hearings. Why does he need to do it right away? There are several reasons. Reason number one, all right? Marco Rubio put this thing in the intelligence bill about getting information from the agencies. This was Marco Rubio climbing on the disclosure train. He wasn't up for election. So he wasn't at risk politically. He puts that wording in with a 6-month time frame on it, which ended up putting it into June, after the election, after Trump is gone, so that he's safe. And so Marco Rubio will be given credit for what is about to happen. He got on the disclosure train. He's a very transactional guy, and he intends to want to be president of the United States. Now those reports are not due until mid-June. And here's the problem. Here's the risk. The U.S. government has a track record of obfuscating, denying, avoiding, and lying about this issue. They have denied endless FOI requests, held out information, redacted information, and that's in service to the truth embargo. Fine. So the idea that these agencies are somehow going to come in with a whole bunch of juicy documents in June or sooner, it's just a deadline, with very revealing information that would significantly advance the disclosure process is a speculation. There's every possibility they're going to come with a bunch of cold gruel. It could come in with nothing. It could be fluff. And if they do that, it undermines the ability to get the hearings, because Congress is going to then go, oh my God, we can't do hearings. Here's the reports. And they say it's no big deal. And so that Rubio is handed the Department of Defense, the ONI, and other agencies the tool to possibly scotch these hearings by simply providing very weak reports. We cannot let that happen. Okay, that's the first reason. Second reason, uh, he if they can get these hearings done, get the hearings underway, which inevitably will lead to disclosure by the president, and Biden is able to finally confirm safely and appropriately, because the hearings will present the evidence to the world that is pretty much conclusive, there's an extraterrestrial presence. In that instant, he acquires perhaps one of the greatest political legacies of all time. And what does that mean? Massive political capital.
But do you
He'll
think
be
that
able
that's what
to,
he wants? Like,
of
that's
course
the
he will.
catch.
He wants, does he want the political capital? God, yes.
I mean,
Of
he
course
may want the political capital, but is he willing to take that? Because any president that's going to take that on, that's a lift. And that's a lift where they're going to be stuck with the consequences. They're going to be stuck with the benefits and the virtues. They're also going to be stuck with the calamities. I mean, like, for
Well,
example, what about all those?
if the virtues are obvious, the calamities are speculative.
The calamities are speculative, but you know they're going to be there.
I don't know that.
You
I
don't
know
know that?
there's
Come
gonna be
on. There's never
calamities.
things that are just perfect all the way around.
Well, look again. Let me be clear.
I'm not
The,
saying it's a reason for him not to do it. Don't
I'm just,
misunderstand me.
but
I'm not saying that.
the
He should.
political legacy that will come is a certainty. What problems may develop thereafter are speculation. And so, as an equation, this is not a hard one to solve. But here's the point here is the underlying point that needs to be made. Because of the TTSA, because of the work that's been done, hearings are now possible. And the reasons that hearings are so important. Hell, a president doesn't need to have hearings. The president just walk out in the East Room and say there's extraterrestrials here. Well, and that would be a very dangerous, risky, and difficult thing to do. No president has been willing to do it. But that's not the way it's supposed to happen. We're supposed to have hearings. We've been trying to get them for all these years, and the reason we can't get them is because anybody with a brain knows that if proper hearings are held, that the truth embargo will end. And what do I mean by proper hearings? I'm talking about hearings that will go on for weeks. They will go on in front of at least 6 committees. There will be almost certainly nothing but political witnesses. Think David Fravor, 50 David Fravors. And this political testimony will be profound. I mean, this military testimony will be profound. And not only that, it will be viewed by hundreds of millions of people around the world. And so over a period of weeks, the evidence, which will simply lay to rest any doubts about the fact that this is not a human technology here, will be presented to millions of people. The president will not be in the hearings. The president will be sitting in the White House watching these hearings. The DOD guys will be watching these hearings. And so after a time, then it will be possible for the president to be able to meet with key people in the DOD as well as top congressional leaders, and they'll have a chat. And they will agree amongst themselves that the evidence is pretty much clear and overwhelming. Yes, this is clearly a non-human technology. And therefore, the president can then go in front of the American people and say, based upon the evidence that you have seen and I have seen, it's clear that this is a non-human technology and this extraterrestrial presence is real. And I think we now can confirm that. And why is that so important? It's not the president coming out and saying, I've known about the ET presence for 30 or 40 years, but I couldn't tell you because there was a truth embargo. But I'm going to tell you now. No, it is the president saying, I am as convinced by this evidence that's been presented in these hearings as you are. And I have consulted with top people, and we have concluded that the evidence confirms this presence, and I'm going to confirm it to you as well. He wins. The Congress wins. The committee chairs are heroes. All the committee members that ask the questions before this vast audience are heroes. The DOD, which has been cooperating. In the middle of the hearings, undoubtedly the reports will finally come in from the ONI, and these reports are going to be filled with really good stuff because they are not going to stay off the disclosure train. They're going to get on it. And so now we have that material. Everybody wins. And this is the point that I'm going to be making over and over again. What we have been witnessing, going back to its origins in 2015-16, as well as the announcement in 2017 in the news articles and the responses from the Navy and the Army and everything else, has not been some scientific research project. It has been a public relations project in which the government, and this is not easy, is trying to end the truth embargo and extricate it from this 70-year lie in such a way that it looks good and everybody loves it. It's
Very interesting.
It's image control. It's what every damn movie star who gets caught, I don't know, screwing a prostitute has to do in order to recover their career.
It's either that or paying off their lawyer.
This is a public relations program.
Let me ask you this. So, last question, and I really do appreciate you saying for the time. I
I'll stay as long
love
as
these
you want. It's
conversations.
my job.
Yeah, I love these conversations. How oh no, look, I can stay here for another hour. We just have a meeting that I got to get to. But what happens from here on out, from your perspective, like going forward? Because I know you. I guess I look at this and I say I don't trust, and I think a lot of Americans don't trust the political leaders that we have in this country. Many of these guys are greedy. Many of these guys are corrupt. Money basically is the impetus for their actions and their behaviors. I mean, 90% of the races are won by the side with the most cash. And to a situation where the military, where the majority of it, the money is spent, is in the black, now we've added this extra layer of not just in the black for things that are taking place on Earth, but now we're adding an extra layer of extraterrestrial civilizations potentially to this equation. Like this just seems on some level terrifying, especially from the standpoint of not trusting Congress. And where do you think this goes? Like because I don't think I'm alone in that, and not in this kind of distrust of Congress. And if we can't just trust them on terrestrial issues,
it's going to go where it's going to go. We have the government that we have.
Yeah.
Right? I don't see it quite the way you see it. I don't think it's dire as you think, but nevertheless, sure. Every nation is in the same boat. Disclosure is going to come to the Russian people. Putin's in power. It's going to come to the Russian people if Putin wasn't in power.
We'll go there for a moment. Why don't the other governments release this information? I mean, Brazil has multiple investigations into UFOs. I mean, Operation Saucer by itself is just profound.
You ask a huge question, Jamarl, and then I don't answer it. Then you ask me an even huger question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
These are 1 hour responses to each one of these. You said, where is it going to go? We're going to have hearings. There's going to be a confirmation by the president. The other heads of state are going to confirm, and we're going to be in the post-disclosure world. And then the citizens of nations and their political leaders are going to deal with it. I don't know how they're going to deal with it. I don't. It's going to be unbelievably complicated, but it is going to happen, and we'll see what happens. But this idea that, well, it's not going to happen because we don't know how it's going to, that's not the way it works, right? And so it's just going to happen, and it'll work out the way it can. In terms of why the truth embargo has lasted as long as it has, that's a really interesting question, and there'll be some very big books written about that. But essentially, as I've said many, many times, and I have to repeat this because a lot of people have forgotten about this. We have, unless you're older than 75, or if you want to say until you're 10 years old, you don't know squat. So unless you're, older than 65, you've lived your entire world, your entire life under a nuclear threat of total annihilation.
Right.
Every day of my life, I have lived under this threat. We became used to it. Like, well, it's like It's just normal. It's just what it is. But it hasn't happened, so let's move on. Well, that's unfortunately not the way the world works. So we have lived under this nuclear threat, and it is a huge deal. One mistake, and there have been at least a half a dozen moments when we almost did it. We almost launched those missiles. At any time, everything that we know and care about, every hope and dream we have is gone. Now, there were people inside the governments of all nations, but certainly the developed nations, whose responsibility was to make sure that doesn't happen. That's a pretty heavy responsibility. How can we institute policies, provide defenses, or whatever the hell we got to do to ensure that a nuclear war doesn't take place? There's a whole lot of people out there that have no appreciation for that at all. They just think, well, yeah, it didn't happen. I don't know why it didn't happen. Who cares? And they go back to their Facebook pages. Look, that was the Cold War, 1947 to 1991, 44 years. So when the government learned about the extraterrestrial presence in 47, which they did, right? Which is one of the reasons why I can say with absolute certainty that our government's known about the ET presence since 47, latest, because they got a vehicle and ET bodies, which I think is as confirmatory as you can get. For those 44 years, the government made a decision that the extraterrestrial issue is so complicated, so unclear. We don't know that much. We don't know the tech. We don't know this. We don't, and the consequences of that becoming known are too unclear with respect to the nuclear threat that we must embargo this. We to the best we can. It can't be a secret because the ETs fly all over the damn place, right? It's like trying to have a secret plane that's constantly landing in airports around the country. So they couldn't make it a secret. But they could classify documents, but they couldn't make a secret of the issue, the phenomena. So they embargoed it. In other words, they went to enormous lengths to ensure that the engagement by the public would be minimal, that there would be no formal acknowledgement of this presence, and it would be made a taboo, would be made ridicule. In other words, it was like Cuba. They embargoed it like they embargoed Cuba. Yeah, there's an island down there, but you can't go there. And if you go there, we'll put you in jail. So they embargoed it for national security reasons. And I'm not going to argue with them. They didn't know how long the Cold War was going to go on. It lasted 44 years. They didn't know how bad it would get. By the 80s, there was over 80,000 nuclear weapons in the arsenals of 8 countries. Any one of those countries could have ended up launching a nuclear war. We were dancing on the edge of the abyss for 44 solid years, and the U.S. embargoed it, and all of the U.S. allies went along with that. Nobody was going to cross us on this. In other words, the United States is the only thing standing between my country and the Soviet nuclear missiles, and I am not going to piss off the United States. And so our allies got behind us. They have stuck with it. China and the Soviet Union did not disclose for their own reasons. It wasn't because, well, they may have also been concerned that the extraterrestrial issue being fully acknowledged might be dangerous in terms of the nuclear war issue. It might trigger it. They might have felt that way as well, but they also were ruling over extreme national security states, authoritarian rule, sort of like North Korea, only not quite that bad. And so extraterrestrials being confirmed to their people was not going to help them maintain the kind of control over their citizens that they want. And so they didn't see an advantage to it. So they didn't disclose. And that pretty much covers the world, doesn't it? That's how the truth embargo, amazingly, was able to last as long as it has. It shouldn't have lasted this long, but hey, a lot of effort went into it. And now we're in a different time, different place. The issue has gone to a different place, and it's going to happen. It's finally going to happen. We're going to get disclosure. Hearings are going to come first. Oh, which brings me to the third reason why they need to get this done right away. Because as it becomes increasingly apparent to Putin and Xi Jinping and some others that The train is getting ready to leave the station. The United States is starting to hold hearings. Witnesses are coming forward. Any one of these leaders could step in and just snatch the ball right out of the hands, right? In other words, you're trying to catch a foul ball at the All-Star game, and just before it gets to you, they reach across and grab that ball right in front of your face. So, and that could still happen. There's no guarantee. There's no way they can prevent it. All they can do is get going and get it done, so that before Putin can figure out it's probably a good idea for him to go ahead and do it himself, we'll get it done. But there's no guarantee there. That's the third reason. So you'll be hearing me putting these reasons forth lots. You're going to hear me all over the damn place talking about this, sending a message to the Biden administration. Do not wait for those reports that Rubio asked for in the intelligence bill. Do not delay. You can't, the pandemic doesn't mean you can do it now, but as soon as it's possible, you must get those witnesses into town, hold those hearings, and get this done. You can't afford to lose that legacy. You can't afford to have another country snatch this out from under you. Does this make sense? Does this add up to you?
It entirely makes sense. Absolutely
Good.
makes sense. This is why I appreciate you coming on, because you have there's a political aspect to the way that you talk about this. And politics is going to be the thing that, at this point, it's ensconced in it, right? This gets into the whole exopolitics
It's a
stuff.
political problem.
Yeah,
It's
it
not a
is.
scientific problem. It's a political problem.
For example, how do you deal with the people who are saying, I was abducted? Meaning, what does the government do after that? You have all of these people who say, I was abducted, and the government basically said, it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. The moment that you say, this is real, then all of those people at this point start raising their hands and say, see, we told you. Yeah.
The contact issue is just one of those questions on that list that I told you about. There are a list of brutally difficult questions and issues to approach, okay? Now, they know that, right? They know that. And one of the reasons that we haven't been able to get the hearings and get the truth embargo is because they know that, and nobody wants to face those questions. So the way things are working out helps to mitigate that problem. Now, what do I mean by that? The hearings are going to be about national security, and there's going to be nothing but military witnesses. I'm not going to be there. Steve Greer's not going to be testifying. No contactees are going to be testifying. This is going to be about the hearings. Now, questions may arise in the media, and they may toss things out and so forth. But from the standpoint of hearings, no. Because what you do is you make it a national security matter, which makes it politically safe. You bring in qualified witnesses, military people. They present evidence that's compelling. You acknowledge the extraterrestrial presence. And at that instant, we're in the post-disclosure world. Now, in the post-disclosure world, the hurdle has been jumped, all right? We're now in the post-disclosure world. And now new hearings get underway, and they go on for months. And it's these hearings, post-disclosure, where all of these other things are going to be brought up. Contactees, underground bases, whatever the hell is there, they're going to be looked at in these hearings. But the worst is over. We've crossed over to the post-disclosure world. People are going to be thrilled about that. And then we'll start to learn the rest. But the political damage will be mitigated. There'll be less focus on who do we sue, who do we put in jail, who lied, who didn't, and all that stuff. And the focus will be on, oh, wow, there's hearings coming up Wednesday, and there's some contactees are going to be testifying, or whatever. So they break it up. This may sound simple, but in fact, it actually works. It's the way it had to be done. And it's been orchestrated. That's the way they planned it. And it's working out pretty well, except they got hit with a pandemic and Donald Trump. And the fact that they were still able to slow walk this. Think about this. These people who could have gone and worked anywhere they wanted after they left the DOD or the CIA, made big
TTSA.
money.
Yeah.
Instead of doing that, they agreed to sign on to this project that was not going to be an easy road. There was not going to be a lot of money, though they did hope to raise a lot of money in their public benefit corporation. But the situation was such that they only raised about $2.5 million. But they took this enormous risk. However, the announcement wasn't going to happen. It was supposed to happen in 2016. In other words, Clinton becomes president, and boom, the whole thing gets done. In other words, it was bam, bam, thank you, ma'am. That's what they expected. In other words, they weren't even going to be exposed. Their names were not even going to be in play until shortly before or shortly after Clinton became president.
But Stephen, I think this kind of makes my point. I think this kind of backs up my point a little bit more. In the
Yeah.
same way that it didn't work out in this kind of as expected pathway. I mean, like you said, Clinton was expected to win. She had a 98% chance of winning on the day that she lost the race.
Well, not the day she lost, but maybe about 3
No. When they were running that night, Huffington Post had her chances of winning at over 90%.
Oh, really?
Really?
Huffington Post, after knowing about Comey, I want to see that article. Did you ever read that article?
I'm not lying to you. They had her chances of winning at
Man, they were
skyrocket. Like,
wrong.
it was through the roof.
Comey had already come out with the damn wiener thing and made 2 statements that brought the whole Benghazi thing up, and then the WikiLeaks dump and all that other stuff. 98%, that's ridiculous.
She had a high
But
chance
I know
of
the
winning.
point you're making.
Yeah.
Could something else go wrong?
Yes.
Of course.
Of course. That's the point. That's the only point I'm making. Look, from your mouth to God's ears, I hope it turns out the way that way. Where it's this kind of orderly, straightforward, we're going to deal with the problems, that type of thing. I do hope it's that way. And I do hope it's one of those things that it's not, that the society deals with it in a way that a rational society should.
Yeah, well, I hope that there's a lot of things I hope for politically. Look, all I can say is that the truth embargo has to end.
Agreed.
And there's a wonderful analogy to this.
Agreed.
If you go back to early 1960s, when the civil rights movement was starting to make more traction, it was getting places it hadn't gotten before. And it became clear to some people that we may very well finally get the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Act, which is the two primary goals of the civil rights movement at the time. There were people that were still raising the specter that, like, this is not going to go well. That if we get these acts, it's going to go badly. The segregationists in the South are going to run rampant. They're going to be rioting. They're going to be killing black people. The states are going to succeed, or whatever the hell. And that there were people, even within the black community, that were saying, we're rushing this too fast. We need to give the South more time. It will evolve out of segregation. It will basically just naturally, organically move away from that. If we force this issue, it's going to create a lot of pain and suffering. That literally was going on back then. Now, I'm not saying it was a majority view by any means, but it was a legitimate view being raised by people on both sides of the issue. And ultimately, that response to that is, we got to end segregation.
Yeah, you got to do it anyway. It does, like, the outcome matters less.
We've been working to do that. It's now reachable, so we're going to do it. And all these other possibilities are less of a concern than if we do not do this and continue to with the status quo as it is. And that's the best you can hope for as an activist or an activist movement. And I don't think anybody now regrets that we did those bills were passed. And would hate to think what would have happened if we waited another 15 years.
Agreed.
And so that's the same way to look at this, Jamarl.
No, I agree.
It's time to happen, and then hopefully we'll do the best we can with it.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I used to be one of those people, that on no shirt on, welcome space brother at the top of a building. And then doing politics, I got a little bit more cynical of the whole thing.
Yeah, that was a key moment in that movie.
Yeah,
that beautiful
was.
little blonde girl, sweet girl, holding up the sign. That's the fictional version of it.
Welcome, space brother.
What can I say? Look, Hollywood has been a two-edged sword.
Yes, it
It's
has.
done
It's a
more.
what is
It's
that?
done
It's a
more.
cookbook. But it's
It's done
it's a
it's done
cookbook
more
was the
to
other one.
educate people about the reality of extraterrestrials than any other genre. It's just billions of people have gotten their introduction to the
Yeah.
ET idea through these films. On the other hand, so many of these films scare the shit out of you.
Right. It's like
You're thinking,
aliens are eating
oh my God.
babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
The
but
Twilight Zone.
overall
It's a
though,
cookbook.
overall
It's a
it'll be
cookbook to serve
Spielberg.
man. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be
Uh,
Spielberg and Contact and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. These are the movies that
yes.
will be remembered. These are the movies that will be lauded, and the other ones will be
Especially
just
Contact.
fluff. Yeah,
Especially
fluff.
Contact. I thought Contact
Yeah,
was
especially
exceptional.
Contact.
The mental element of that and the like the weirdness associated with it and the inability to try to explain it in rational terms because our science doesn't even deal with the consciousness aspect like talking about, and for that matter had nothing that they could explain it with, and yet the experience was real. Like it's I think that is more right than not.
It was this extraordinary film. Look,
Yeah.
the movies like Alien and Independence Day will be forgotten. They will be just fluff entertainment of another era. But those movies that we're talking about, and there's few others, Arrival and a number of others, that will be, I don't know, they will be put in a special place and studied by students for hundreds of years as the films that tried to show the extraordinary thing that was coming that created that ultimately led to disclosure and the disclosure day, which is what World Disclosure Day, and the post-disclosure world. Those are the films. The other ones, hey, made a lot of money. I think Avatar will get treated pretty well too,
Yeah.
even though it's a lot more fantasy. But when you watch that movie, it's not about evil aliens, obviously. So there'll be movies like that, and good on them. And they will start to get that lauding will take place soon. I mean, it will take place very quickly after disclosure comes. People are going to immediately be pulling those films up on stream and watching them, and then feeling those movies again after having finally been told by their own government, yeah, those are extraterrestrials you've been seeing up in the sky. They have been engaging us, and it's going to be very powerful moments for everybody, including me. And again, I think Jamarl, this is going to work out pretty well. I think you're going to be very pleased with how this is ultimately going to come down, as compared to, well, pick anything else, the Trump administration, the pandemic, the Iraq War, pick any of those. Compared to those, this is going to be a walk in the
Yeah,
park.
500,000 dead Americans. I don't think it's going to be worse. And yeah, I do think it's going to be world changing. My hope is that humanity can see itself in a global or a universal perspective
Yeah, and
and
as a
see
single
us as human
species,
beings. Yeah, as opposed to
species,
just
one race, the human race, all of
exactly.
that becomes far more, how would you say, far more approachable, far more, I think, impacting in a post-disclosure world. I'm not saying that it's just going to suddenly change everybody's view, but at that point, whether we feel it or not, no matter who you are, whether you get it or feel it or not, at that point that the ET presence has been confirmed, you are in fact part of one race. You are part of the
Yes.
human race,
And you're part of a
and
large continuum
any
of
other
species.
divisions are irrelevant.
Yeah, yeah, 1,000% agree. Like the moment that you have other species in the universe, you're part of a larger continuum, and the group that's
Human,
associated with
and
you
they're another,
closer.
and they're another species. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's
And and
astonishing.
and we're going to deal with them as a human race, right? And
Yes.
we're not going to be they're not going to be down here, you know, cutting deals or arrangements with this group or that group. They're going to be dealing with the planet, and we're going to be dealing as a planet, acting as a planet, and a human race. And I believe that is the beginning of what would ultimately transform the human society and take us away from the path that we've been on, which only leads to destruction. The path that we're on, the end of the road is destruction. Until we leave that path, that's exactly what's going to happen, and easily could happen in our lifetime.
We are either
Uh,
going to evolve or we are either going to die. And I think that's the true point. I mean, look, even if it's us starting a war with some other species that destroys Earth, yeah, we have to evolve. I mean, I mean,
well, that's another
honestly,
way to start over.
I mean, honestly, do you? If you were another species out there and we had the capacity to get to you, you shouldn't be comfortable. I'm sorry, you shouldn't be comfortable. Like, that's
You
not a
just
pleasant concept. The idea that we have weapons and we have the capacity to get to you, and if we have any capacity and advantage, we're going to take it.
But
Um,
you just raised one of the most important questions of all, right? The why question. Why are they here in the mod? Not the why were they here 8,000 years ago, or 9,000 or five. No, why are they here now? Why are they engaging us at the level they have since 1947? And the short answer to that is that there are several reasons, but I believe the core reason, and I talk about this a lot, uh, is that they are aware of where we are and where we're going. They're aware of our scientific status. They're aware of our technological trends, and and here's what they know. They know that we essentially uh, came to understand atomic physics. We know that we weaponized atomic physics. We know that we built a test bomb. We know that we then dropped actual bombs on human beings. They know that, of course, we continued to build even more of these bombs and create what we now know as the Cold War. That they know. And they also know that our theoretical physics is dancing around the edges for a while now, not 1940, but I think in the last 25 years, is dancing around, and they knew then it was going to happen, right? But now we're there, is dancing around the edges of the workaround to relativity. Once we get that, we can build interstellar craft. And so what do they know? They know that this civilization, which is 300,000, well, this species, Sapiens sapiens, is 300,000 years old. It finally developed technology. It's finally developed technology of the type we now know about in the 20th century. And therefore, in a very short amount of time, we're going to be able to put our atomic bombs on interstellar craft and head on out into the galaxy. No problem. Simple. It's obvious. Common sense. And guess what? That ain't going to happen. As you say, that is not going to happen. If we were in exactly the same situation, and we had interstellar craft and we were monitoring some planetary civilizations in the Vega system or in the
we wouldn't
uh,
allow it. We
yeah,
wouldn't allow
and
them.
we were
Yeah.
watching them, and they finally got to the point where they were developing atomic weapons and were close to developing starships. Do you think that we would just go, well, we can't interfere, we have to
No.
stay back here and hope that if they actually put those weapons on their starships that they won't come visit us? Uh-uh.
Yeah, we can't
We
take
would
the chance.
intervene, meaning you will not put those weapons on interstellar craft and leave your solar system, which means that we have to intervene now in a way that not the same as ancient times. I believe there was interactions in ancient times. This is different. We have to intervene now. And that is at the core. It's not the only thing they're doing here, but that is the reason why we've seen them, why they made themselves obvious, why they put the crop circles down, while all this crap's going on, and that they have been helping nudging us to the point where we would confirm to them, confirm to ourselves that they exist. Because while they fully intend to intervene, and there's a lot of ways they could, they're doing it responsibly. They can stop us from coming into space with those weapons. All they have to do is blow up our technology. They could shut down this planet in a couple of days. They could turn us into, Stone Age if they wanted to. No, they're doing it responsibly. Uh, Interaction, eventually disclosure, followed by discussions. Followed by open contact, followed by some exchanges of ideas. One of which is, if you want to if you want to deal with us, you want to get some benefits of being involved in other civilizations beyond your own, you got to get rid of the nukes. Getting rid of the nukes has been at the core of this from the beginning of 1947, which is why the most important evidence, the most important thing we know about extraterrestrials is the fact that they turn our nuclear weapons off often. Not only ours, but the Soviets and the Russians. They turn our nuclear weapons off. That is the most important thing we know. And any exopolitical discussion should start with that.
Yeah,
So
that's a
yeah,
clear
that's
communication. That is a
that's
very
that's
clear
the answer.
communication. Yeah.
So we're not taking those weapons. We're not leaving with those babies, and we're never going to be a threat to them because we're never going to be able to. The only thing that could possibly change that would be another civilization turning up, the Borg or some god awful civilization, ET civilization, so powerful that it drives the groups dealing with us now away, and then contacts our government, says, "Hey, we got no trouble with you having nukes. We got nukes too. We got all kinds of weapons. We want you to join us. Take those nukes, build your craft, and together we will conquer the galaxy." That is about the only thing that
Don't
could
say
prevent
that. Don't
us
say
coming.
that. Oh, that's terrifying. Don't say that.
Well, yeah, but I'm sure some sci-fi movie will use that theme at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so fortunately, that's not what's happening. So
The
anyway, I'm excited.
I've
I
been
think it's
excited
coming,
too over this.
and
I've
don't
been.
hesitate to call me back anytime you want, Jamal.
Oh
Anytime.
man, I've been thoroughly excited over this. You have no idea, and it's like I've been, agitating my wife and everything else over the past several years, because my thought is, oh my God, this stuff is coming out. This is coming out. I
Yeah, you
can't
can
believe this
feel
is
it,
coming
can't you?
out.
And I'm getting this from lots of people, and all these interviews I'm doing, it's the same thing. People can feel it, they're excited, but they may only know about this article and that event and this thingy here, and Luis Elizondo said this. They haven't, had the luxury of being locked in a room for basically in a room for a year with nothing to do but follow this. Well, that's all I've been doing. In other
Yeah,
words, I'm able to follow the whole picture. Very few people can. And so they're building up this expectation and excitement, but they just have no sense of where it's going to go. They don't know what's going to happen, and so they're in that state. Whereas I have a pretty good idea because all I do is follow this,
and you've
and
been
so
thinking about this for
consequently,
a very long time. I
yeah,
mean,
and I'm following what's
yeah,
happening, and so I seeing the big picture, and so what I'm trying to do is present that big picture so that people can calm down a little bit and maybe get a stronger sense of what's happening and not be too confused or upset because, well, that happened and what the hell does that mean and whatever. I'm just trying to prevent a picture that they can drop into that will allow them to be a little more comfortable as this thing goes forward. That's
basically a
my job.
contextual version of of what's taking place right now, in a way that they
Exactly.
may not have it.
Trying to paint pictures that make sense to people who can't step back far enough to see the whole picture. And that includes journalists, right? There's plenty of journalists out there writing about that. They still haven't figured out what the hell's going on. I get it. That's all right. And also because the To the Stars Academy, and by the way, I forgot to mention this. A lot of people are all upset. Oh, Luis Elizondo and Mellon left the TTSA. Steve Justice left the TTSA. The TTSA is going to collapse. It's falling apart. No, no. They they had to leave the TTSA, and they've been replaced already. And the TTSA is making some adjustments because its role is changing, and they knew that. It just took a lot longer. The thing is, if you're going to, it's one thing to go on the Hill and hold some briefings, right? It's one thing to vet witnesses and put together the unidentified show. TTSA was all part of that, and these guys were part of that. But now we're approaching the point where actual negotiations for the hearings are going to take place. In other words, the actual sit down, how are we going to do this? Who are the witnesses and everything else? And the members of Congress and possibly even members of the DOD that are going to be involved in this negotiation are not going to want to and are not going to have to be dealing with the To the Stars Academy. That is not appropriate. It's a NGO, public benefit corporation that's raised money with multiple mission statements, including fiction books and everything else. And these guys can't be dealing with them as representatives of such an organization. It's not a criticism. It's a simple truth. And so they had to step out. And the three people that stepped out are the three most important people in the damn group. Mellon, he's the political guy. Elizondo, he's the witness guy. And Justice is the contractor guy. He's the guy that was working for a corporate government contractor dealing with ET technology. And so he is going to be very significant. And so these three guys had to step away, and those negotiations will now be taking place between Congress and DoD personnel and Christopher Mellon, Louis Elizondo, Steve Justice as individuals, private citizens, essentially activists in a way, to complete these negotiations. And that's why they stepped out. Very few people know that and have figured it out, but I'm happy to tell them.
The
And so it
voice,
was actually the last signal I needed to know that these hearings and the negotiations on these hearings
we're
are
about to
at
take
hand.
place. The voice that you guys have been listening to is executive director of the Radium Research Group, founded in 1996 to end the government-imposed embargo on the truth behind extraterrestrial-related phenomena. Stephen, thank you for joining me, man. I really appreciated this conversation.
Can I say one last thing?
Go for it. Of course.
Look, my website is paradigmresearchgroup.org. Please consider following Paradigm Research Group on Twitter and Facebook. Also, at my website, you can subscribe to a free updates newsletter that I put out that will keep you informed on these things. And also, I have started a podcast because everybody else has one and I didn't. It's called The Disclosure Wire. The first introductory video is up. You can find it at disclosurewire.org, or it's linked to my website. And feel free to view it. Please like it, maybe subscribe. And there will be more podcasts coming, including interviews and so forth. And that's where my work is right now. And I appreciate the opportunity to tell you that. And until next time, Jamal,
Absolutely.
stay safe, my friend.
Oh man, absolutely. And I really do appreciate this. You can come on anytime you want. And I'll put the link to the site below, and I'll cut these videos so they will be self-contained. I can give them to you so you can have it and put it out on your social media. But dude, I really appreciate this. Thank you. This has been a great conversation.
All righty. Until next time. Bye.
Absolutely. All right. That has been, I guess you can call it Fault Lines Extended, if you want to call it that. But look, guys, I want to thank all of you for joining us. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, and I'm going to say subscribe. Thanks all.